When we think of the Middle Ages, we imagine dirt roads, candlelight, and people who thought bathing was optional. But hidden beneath the mud and myths are some seriously clever inventions. Ideas so practical, we're still using them hundreds of years later. From timekeeping to heavy machinery, medieval minds came up with solutions that shaped the modern world. They didn't have smartphones, but they had grit, gears, and genius. Here are 5 medieval inventions so smart, we still use them today. The watermill. Before the industrial age and long before electricity, medieval people figured out how to get free power just by using rivers. Enter the watermill, one of the most important machines in history. The basic idea was simple: let a river turn a giant wheel. That motion could then drive all sorts of machinery, most commonly millstones to grind grain. But it didn't stop there. Medieval watermills were adapted for fulling cloth, forging metal, sawing wood, and even running early bellows for blacksmiths. These machines turned flowing water into mechanical energy, and they did it quietly, efficiently, and without burning a single lump of coal. By the 12th century, Europe had thousands of watermills, each one turning manual labour into machine power. For many villages, the local mill was the economic heart of the community. The design was brilliant in its simplicity: a large wooden wheel, paddles to catch the water, and a system of gears and shafts to convert that rotation into usable force. Many were built right into stone buildings or dug into riverbanks, some of which still exist today. And here's the kicker: the basic mechanics behind watermills are still used today in modern hydroelectric power. The materials have changed, sure, but the medieval concept of using water to generate energy still running strong. The mechanical clock. Before smartphones, before wristwatches, even before pendulum clocks, there was the medieval mechanical clock. And honestly, it was a mind-blowing leap forward. Up until the 13th century, people measured time with sunlight, sand, or water. It worked, kind of. But in churches, monasteries, and growing towns, people needed more precision, especially when it came to prayers, curfews, and market hours. So, medieval engineers did something revolutionary. They built machines that could track time by themselves. The earliest mechanical clocks used weights, gears, and something called an escapement mechanism, a clever device that released energy in steady intervals, allowing a wheel to tick forward at a regular pace. For the first time, timekeeping didn't depend on nature. It depended on human-made machinery. The earliest known example? A clock installed in a church tower in England around 1283. It didn't have hands or a dial. It rang bells. But it was accurate, and it kept ticking day and night. As the tech improved, clock towers spread across Europe, becoming the centerpiece of medieval towns. They weren't just practical. They were statements of power and precision. And guess what? The core mechanism behind these medieval clocks, the gear trains, the escapement, the winding weights, are still used in modern mechanical watches and clocks today. Even your high-end Swiss watch owes its life to a few monks and metalworkers who wanted to ring the bell on time. In an age without electricity, medieval clockmakers literally rewrote how humans understood time. And we've been living on their schedule ever since. Eyeglasses. It's hard to imagine life without glasses, but that simple pair of lenses perched on your nose. That started in the Middle Ages. Around the late 13th century, somewhere in Italy, most likely in Pisa or Florence, craftsmen began creating convex glass lenses mounted in frames, designed to help people read and work up close. These weren't fancy designer specs. They were clunky, often handheld or balanced awkwardly on the nose, but they worked. And for monks, scribes, and scholars who spent hours hunched over manuscripts, they were a miracle. Before this invention, poor eyesight meant an early end to reading, writing, or skilled work. In a world where literacy was rare and precious, eyeglasses literally extended a person's intellectual life. What's fascinating is how quickly they spread. By the 14th century, eyeglass making had become its own respected craft. Guilds of glassmakers and metalworkers in Venice, Nuremberg and other cities began producing lenses tailored to different types of vision, long before the science of optics fully understood what they were even fixing. And here's the kicker. The basic design of those medieval glasses hasn't really changed. 2 lenses, a frame, and a way to hold it on your face. Whether it's with wire arms or nose pads, the concept remains the same. Today, whether you wear glasses, contact lenses, or have laser-corrected eyes, you owe a nod to the unknown genius who looked at a blob of glass and thought, what if this could help me see better? They weren't just sharpening vision. They were reshaping the future, one blurry page at a time. The blast furnace. If there's one invention that truly fueled the rise of modern civilization, it's the blast furnace. And yes, its roots go straight back to the Middle Ages. Before blast furnaces, blacksmiths used simple forges to work iron. They could heat and shape metal, but they couldn't melt it. That changed sometime around the 12th or 13th century, when craftsmen in parts of Europe figured out how to supercharge their furnaces using stronger bellows and towering chimney-like designs. The result? A furnace that could reach such intense heat, it didn't just soften iron, it melted it. That allowed for the mass production of cast iron and eventually steel, which changed everything. Tools got tougher, weapons stronger, buildings taller. The medieval blast furnace was a marvel of raw power and smart design. Workers stacked layers of iron ore, charcoal and limestone inside a tall stone-lined chamber. Bellows, sometimes powered by water wheels, pumped in air at the bottom, feeding the fire to temperatures over 1,500 degrees Celsius, 2,700 degrees Fahrenheit. As the mixture melted, molten iron collected at the base, while slag floated on top and could be skimmed away. It was messy, dangerous and brutally hot, but it worked. Villages that had blast furnaces became industrial centres before industry was even a concept. Today, the basic design is still in use. Modern blast furnaces in steel plants follow the same principle. Feed in iron ore and fuel at the top, blast in air at the bottom, extract molten metal. We've swapped charcoal for coke and stone walls for steel chambers, but the genius of the process is pure medieval. They weren't just making tools, they were forging the future, one blistering pour at a time. The public notary seal and signature. In today's world, we sign everything: contracts, IDs, permission slips, receipts. But that simple act of putting your name on something to prove it's real, that's not modern, that's medieval. Back in the Middle Ages, when most people couldn't read or write, signatures and personal seals became essential, especially for merchants, landowners, and city officials who needed to prove their deals were legit. So they developed a system we still use today, the notary seal. A notary was an official appointed by a city, church, or crown, whose job was to witness and authenticate documents. When a deal was made, or a contract signed, the notary would press a unique seal, usually made from wax or lead, into the paper. That seal stood for authority. It meant the document wasn't fake. It meant the deal was binding. For people who couldn't sign their name, the seal was their legal footprint. Some even had signet rings, personal stamps they wore on their fingers to press into wax, like a medieval version of DocuSign. The cool part, we still do this. Notary publics still verify documents today with embossed seals and official signatures. Wills, real estate transactions, power of attorney. You can't finalize any of it without a notary seal. In some countries, a seal holds more power than a written signature. So while we live in a digital age, our legal system is still built on medieval ideas of trust, identity, and proof. Medieval people didn't just invent ways to build or fight. They invented ways to protect what mattered and made sure it lasted. It's easy to think of the Middle Ages as backwards or primitive, but the truth is, they gave us more than castles and cathedrals. They gave us ideas that stuck. from powering machines with rivers to tracking time, improving eyesight, forging steel, and proving identity. Medieval inventions quietly laid the foundation for the world we live in today. What's wild is how little some of these things have changed. The watermill still drives turbines. Mechanical clock parts still tick inside luxury watches. Eyeglasses still sit on millions of noses. And every time you sign a document or notarize a form, you're echoing something that started centuries ago. The tools may look different, but the thinking behind them hasn't gone anywhere. So the next time someone calls the Middle Ages the Dark Ages, you can remind them some of the smartest, most practical stuff we still use came from that so-called darkness. And who knows, maybe 800 years from now, someone will still be using something we invented today.